Good morning, everyone. We're here together at the Vernon C. Russell Water Treatment Plant, and we're here with John Toomey,
Cilluffo,
and Jason McCarthy.
Jason McCarthy is the operator.
Water treatment plant manager and primary operator.
Thank you very much. So what we're asking today to go through the water treatment plant to get an overview of what really happens here. We had a hard time finding it this morning because it's in such a remote residential area. And what we're going to do is have Jason give us a brief history of the plant and what it does, and then we'll go through and visit the different areas.
Sure.
Thank you, Jason.
The Danvers water treatment plant is a surface water filtration plant. The primary water source for both Danvers and Middleton is the Middleton Pond right here. It's a surface water supply. It is 705 million gallons when it's full. This is a water filtration facility that treats about 1.1 to 1.2 billion gallons of water a year. In addition to the raw water supply that is stored here, we feed to it from Emerson Brook at about between 500 and 600 million gallons a year transferred to this water. And then we have Swan Pond, which will only bring in water seasonally because it doesn't recover quite so quickly. So we bring in about between 60 and 80 million gallons a year into this pond. And then water is treated through here. It's brought into this plant. It gets pre-oxidized. We add a coagulant to settle out settleable solids in our sedimentation process. Then it goes through a sand filters to remove any solids that didn't settle, and then through granular activated carbon filtration, which is an organics absorbent material which takes taste, color, and odor causing organic compounds out of the water. And from there, it's a little bit of pH adjustment. We disinfect the water with sodium hypochlorite at about 1 part per million of chlorine, and then from here it is pumped out into the distribution system. As it's pumped out, it receives a chlorine dose enough to sustain a residual amount of less than 1 part per million through the distribution system. We also add sodium fluoride at 0.7 parts. There are 2 supplemental groundwater wells. One of them is an untreated well in the Ipswich River Basin right on the side of Route 114 on the Danvers and Middleton line that pulls about 500,000 gallons of water a day when it runs. We disinfect the water there. We treat for corrosion inhibition and also a little bit of fluoride there.
Question for you.
Yes.
What's your main source? You say surface water. What is your main source of water? Is it wells?
This is the primary
or
source.
Is it just water that runs from rivers and so forth, the rain?
So both the wells and the treatment plant are in the Ipswich River watershed, which is 44.5 square miles.
So the Ipswich River supplies you with your main source of
All of
water?
the water.
Okay.
Yeah. But about 4/5 of it is surface water treated through this facility, and then
Groundwater.
supplemental is pulled from groundwater wells in the same basin.
Right.
Well number 2 is a green sand filtration facility that treats for iron and manganese, which is common in groundwater.
That's the black stuff.
That's the black stuff. So it's also, there is some in surface water too. We can talk about that real quick before we kind of jump back and forth. Iron and manganese are naturally occurring metals in water all around here. In its natural form, it is soluble, it is clear, colorless, odorless, you don't even notice it's there. However, when it comes into contact with an oxidizer, like oxygen, or in our case, sodium hypochlorite, it oxidizes those metals into iron oxide, which is rust, and manganese oxide. And it precipitates out of the water like minerals in a stream.
Well, I'm under the impression, I was born and raised here, so I've been through the water quite a bit. And I was under the impression that the water quality has always been good. Is that correct?
Yes.
Then why do we have a filtration plant?
The water quality after the filtration plant is good.
Okay.
It's actually quite challenging. This raw water supply is high in organics, high in color, and does have that residual amount of iron and manganese. So as far as Massachusetts is concerned, this is one of the more challenging water supplies to treat, always has been from the very beginning.
So this is why we've gone from well water source to, let's say, a filtration plant.
No, we didn't switch from a well to a filtration facility. Prior to this plant was built in 1976. This is a filtration plant. Prior to this, there was the old pumping station at the corner of Lake Street, and that took water out, and it treated for pH. It added some disinfectant, but it wasn't a treatment or a filtration process, so a lot of that color remained in the water. So it was when this plant was built in 1976 when Danvers started to get its history of having good water, as it still does today.
The question that I have is, this water is surface water that's been captured and the reservoir gets filled from different sources that come into it, right?
Primarily rain. Yeah.
Primarily rain. One of the things that I would like to ask is, who dictates the quality of the filtration plant and the quality of the water that goes out from here?
So that would be the horse before the cart. When you're looking to establish a new water supply, you have to look at what you have to work with.
Right.
So you'll send in engineers, hydrogeologists, and they're gonna find the best sources of water and what they'll yield, and then determine what treatment process is required to meet drinking water standards. So that's where it starts.
Okay, but then the new treatment plant, we basically built a $20 million water treatment plant 5 years ago, 6 years ago. That's an extension of the existing plant, correct?
That was additions built to the existing filter plant.
Right.
Yes.
And that's primarily a filtering mechanism.
We added 50% filtration capacity.
Right.
We added higher capacity pumping equipment, so this plant can now produce more water in a shorter amount of time than it could in the past.
Well, that brings up the question, supposedly you supply water to Danvers and Middleton, and supposedly both towns are expanding. Does this mean that in the future, you'll have to expand the plant? Or is the capacity that you have, or the capability that you have today, that will take care of everything?
The capacity, the function of the plant's capacity to treat water is more than adequate to meet today's demands and demands in the next 20 years projected. That was the goal when we sat down to add the increase the capacity of this facility. We also updated electricity, we updated our HVAC, we updated our control mechanisms, we added pre-oxidation, we added a residuals handling facility to reclaim some of that wastewater that was going away as a byproduct. So this process really economized the function of the plant and updated it to today's standards.
You've covered the future.
Covered the future, yes. The tight spot, if you will, is the reservoir's capacity, is the Ipswich River watershed's ability to produce that much water. We just went through that too, and right now we're on track. Our drought management plan, our withdrawal process at this point is on track to head into the future. Exactly how far is tough for me to say. This was done by engineers that are not what I do. So we just went through that. So we're set for the future, for the foreseeable future for now. But water conservation is very important. That's what helps us continue. The ability for this plant and this water supply to meet demand is not solely on the shoulders of those doing this work, but also the consumers, and being conscious of water conservation. Making sure their homes are fitted with water-saving devices, following outdoor watering restrictions that we have imposed. So it is really a community effort to conserve what we have.
Well, one of the issues that I have been dealing with is residents have really gone to a serious extent of saving water.
Mm-hmm.
And what we hear from the Water and Sewer Commission is basically that we're not selling enough water because the costs are going up. So the new treatment plant or new filtration plant make that more efficient, and does it provide the right quality of water that we need in town?
It definitely provides the quality of water that is needed. Now, how that is explained, we follow the rules and regulations and guidelines at the state and federal level. At the federal level, you've got the Safe Drinking Water Act, which dictates exactly the quality of all the drinking water in this country is supposed to be. The states enforce it even further, and then we're the ones that we answer to them. So all the water leaving this facility meets or exceeds all state and federal drinking water standards. And I also, I understand that, I mean, that is, you want to save water, but you want to sell water, but that is the struggle, but that's a...
Well, that's the balance that has to happen.
That's an economic and political, you know.
Right, but we have the water, and we have the customers. The customers are reducing their usage of the water, so how do we compensate for that, you know, with the water source that we have? It seems like the water is always here.
I'm not sure I'm the person to answer. How do we solve the problem between trying to conserve water and how to increase revenue at the
Right.
same time? Yeah, that's. I'm the guy that makes sure the water's safe to drink and makes sure it's
There you
available
go.
for you.
That's good.
But it is even through all of that, there is a finite yield that we have to work with, and as expansion continues, we have to keep that in mind
Right.
as that narrow margin continues to narrow.
And that's what John and I have been talking about on our topics of the town news, is that we are changing our zoning. And the thing is, I hope we're considering the future use, because there's going to be more density and more water required. Sewer is going to go out to Salem, but the water source is right here. So, all right. Thank you very much for the description, and what we want to do is make sure that we are at the Vernon C. Russell Water Treatment Plant, and what we'll try to do is go through some of the systems in the plant so people can understand what really happens in here.
Sure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
We're here at Vernon C. Russell.
All right, this is the Vernon C. Russell water plant. Basically, it's what Danvers and Middleton depends upon for source of liquid water. And it probably is one of the most important functions and situations in the area as far as Danvers and Middleton are concerned. Without water, what will we do?
Every functioning society has to have a water supply. It's one of those things, tens of thousands of people living in close proximity, everyone has to have water. If you were to start a village somewhere, that's one of the first things you're looking for is a supply of water. So this, like you said, this is the Vernon C. Russell Water Treatment Facility. It's a surface water filtration plant. We treat about 1.1 to 1.2 billion gallons of water every year. A primary water supply is surface water. This is Middleton Pond right up front here. It holds 705 million gallons of water when it's full. We transfer to it from those two other sources I mentioned, Emerson Brook and Swan Pond. These are where all these sources are located inside the Ipswich River watershed, and that's where all of our water is coming from the treatment plant, surface water, and the wells. This building is a factory, if you will. It has automated equipment, pumps and controls, valves, and pipelines, and we take water into the plant. We precipitate sellable solids out of it. We filter it, and then we disinfect it. It's really that simple.
That's good. Okay, here we are at the control room.
This is the nerve center, the operations nerve center of the plant. Just like many automated facilities with lots of control functions and equipment, all the equipment in the plant is being controlled by local computers, which are all networked together to speak to this SCADA system. SCADA is a very common function in automated facilities. It's a supervisory control and data acquisition. So we can start, stop, and monitor all plant processes from this room. There's an overview of the entire process right here. Want to bring that over here and get a better look at it?
No, I got it.
So this pretty much is a graphic overlay of the process and many of the functions therein, starting at the pond through raw water, our flow meter to measure the flow of water coming into the plant, through pre-oxidation, and then our flash mix gets its dosage of coagulant, sedimentation process where all the water is allowed to go slowly and precipitate all the settleable solids out. The solids are handled in a solids dewatering facility on the back of the plant. The supernatant, which comes from the process and the sedimentation, goes to sand filtration to take out any solids that didn't settle out, and then through granular activated carbon filtration for organics absorption, takes out taste, color, and odor-causing compounds, and then onto our clear wall, where it gets its dosage of disinfectant and is allowed to spend enough time in there to verify that the disinfection process is complete, and then out to the distribution system it goes. Yep, 2 storage tanks, the State Hospital tank and Folly Hill tank. The State Hospital tank is about 5 million gallons. Folly Hill's just a little bit smaller than that. The distribution system, it's like roots or arteries. It's all arterial, they're all connected. So this plant is connected to the distribution system. Everyone's house and business also connected to the distribution system, and the storage tanks also connected. So what happens is the plant produces water all day long, pushes water into the distribution system, providing system pressure to all the homes and businesses, and at the same time filling those tanks. In the evening, we shut the plant down, and then it is head pressure in those tanks, which supplies city water and fire protection water all night long.
When it leaves the plant, and then from the tanks, is it 30 pounds?
It's going to vary on
It's not an easy answer. When you're asking for the pressure in the system, it all depends on elevation, really. The pumps in the other room here are defeating system pressure, pushing water into the system, and they're leaving here at 55 psi. However, if you go downhill, further down towards the Ipswich River, the pressure is going to be higher. But then as you go up over the hill towards the tanks, the pressure is going to be lower.
That's a good point, because that is significant when you pump the water to the tanks, and that gives you a steady pressure during
The highest pressure that you're going to see system-wide is in the evening, right before this plant shuts down. The tanks are at their fullest, but the plant is still pushing water into the system, so that's when pressure is going to be at its highest. Its lowest will be in the morning, right before the plant turns on, where the tanks are at their lowest for the day, and the pumps here haven't begun yet. This is the pump room. In here we have the beginning of the distribution system. This is the beginning of 135 miles of distribution piping. It leaves the plant here and goes to every home and business and the 2 storage tanks. Connected to this pipe are 2 finished water pumps. They're electric-driven, 350 horsepower electric motors, turning vertical shaft turbine pumps, which are compound centrifugal pumps. They have a capacity each of about 7.5 million gallons per day as a flow rate, and they never work together. They are a redundant process. So we have one and then a backup, and we switch them as we use them. They never run together. First stop inside the building proper. As water enters the building after it's pumped over from the pond, it goes through this process below us. It's called a flash mixer. These are just rapid mixers, making sure that our dosage of coagulant is thoroughly mixed with all the water entering the plant, so it's a very small space with fast-moving water.
So this is the first chemistry kit.
Well, it's the second. We do have pre-oxidation. We've got aerators in the pond, bringing up the oxygen content in the pond, and we also have ozone pre-oxidation as well. But this is the first step inside the building proper. This is the chemical room. After water goes through the flash mix, where it got its initial dose of disinfection and coagulation for precipitation process, water enters below here into these large sedimentation basins. The basins start at that wall and then go under the floor, beyond the building itself, in underground tanks all the way back to the concrete structures in the back of the lawn.
This is all underground?
All underground, yep. There are 4 basins, 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. Like I said, water travels this way, and it's allowed to travel very slowly. Inside these tanks, there is a flocculation section where these flocculators, there's 4 of them for each basin, and there's paddle wheels down there turning very, very slowly, allowing the flock formation that comes from our coagulant addition to form larger and larger flock and collide and then settle out as our byproduct. So we're removing settleable solids in this process. Up in this space that we're standing in, the chemical room, we have 4 major chemicals that we use. Our coagulant, polyaluminum chloride, which is just, it brings out settleable solids from the water. In the blue tanks on the other end is sodium hydroxide for pH adjustment to bring the pH up a little bit. And then we have in these blue tanks our disinfectant, sodium hypochlorite, which we use about 1 part per million to disinfect the water and make sure that it is safe to drink. And then we also have our corrosion inhibition, which is orthophosphate. And what that does is it coats the inside of the pipes to keep the metal from dissolving into the water. It protects us from a lot of those old lead fittings that we've been hunting down for years.
And from rusting out?
Yeah, it protects the metal and it protects the water from the metal. And so those 4 chemicals are what we're using here.
So this is basically the room that controls the chemical additions, removals, or?
It's the room where the chemicals are stored and controlled. Where they're actually dosed into the process may be at different spots around the plant. It's not all right here. This is just the room that holds all of it.
Thank you very much.
This is a gravity belt thickener. This was added in the upgrade as part of an economization process for our process of treating water. Our byproduct is residuals, sedimentation collected in the sedimentation process, and twice a week we'll collect those residuals and dewater them further with this gravity belt thickener. The waste is then collected, the concentrated waste is collected and trucked off to South Essex sewage, and then we reclaim a lot of that water for our process. So this is an economization step to further streamline what we're doing here.
And this is the waste that's disposed of after it's...
Yeah, our byproduct is separated here. So like I said, we've got pond water, we're taking out all of the, like you said, naturally occurring minerals and materials and organic material, and this is separating it from the water, and then it's trucked away.
Great.
This is the sand filter. The water that's on top of the sand media, or at the bottom here, that water's been through the sedimentation process. It's oxidized, it's gone through settling, and now it's going through the sand filter. And here you can see the effluent channel where water has through the sand media and is collected and heading on to the carbon filtration process.
So the water that comes into these channels is basically cleaner water than it was before.
Yes, it's a step-by-step process through the entire thing. This is a carbon filter. This water has already been through the sand filtration process, and then now it's getting all the organics removed. This channel right next to it here is the effluent channel for the carbon filter. It's been through 4-foot thick, deep bed of granulated carbon media, and this water is headed off to be disinfected in the clear well, a little bit of pH adjustment, a little bit of fluoride, and then pumped into this system as drinking water.
So both of these tanks filter into this channel, and I put the water back.
The clear well.
This is one of the carbon filter basis that is being discussed at the town meeting for a $600,000 upgrade, and it's the grids that are down below holding the power. So what we'll do is we'll have an explanation from Jason after we move into the conference room in regards to the condition and the replacement schedule.
So we can talk about the filters. So there's 3 sand filters and 3 carbon filters. Carbon filter and sand filter number 3 are brand new. They were part of the major construction back in 2009, 10, 11, and 12. Carbon 1 and 2 and sand 1 and 2 are original equipment from the plant that was built in 1976. There've only been minor upgrades to those filters since then. During the construction in 2009, 10, 11, carbon 1 and 2 both got new back filter carriages, but the support structure for the media itself inside the filters was not upgraded. And those are made of plastic porous plate, which is a sample of right here. This is what's holding the media up. Above these plates is dividers that separate all the media into individual cells, and they're backwashed 1 cell at a time. The support structure for this plate and those dividers are all made of fiberglass. And we have some evidence, some pictorial evidence and some samples of this fiberglass that seems to have had their fibers weakened and infiltrated with carbon dust or carbon fines from the media over the past 15 plus years, and has destabilized the fibers inside. This is happening at the cut points in the fibers or in the fiberglass where holes were drilled or a machine had cut to form these pieces. It is along those edges and those areas that we find this destabilization of the fibers, and then when the backwash pump goes by and applies water pressure to the bottom of the plate through all that surface area, it winds up breaking the weakened fiberglass over time. And this is all really kind of accelerated this past few years. We've been having to manually fix them. Operators have been having to take the filters offline, dig down through this to expose the broken pieces, take them out and repair them one at a time. And this is happening, like I said, at a very increased rate. So those 2 filters, I don't believe it's a defect. I don't believe it has anything to do with the process at the plant or even the materials handling as we replace the media in each of these filters every 18 months. I just think that it's material fatigue over almost 2 decades now.
Who works this lab?
All the operators working here. We do have a laboratory director. He is qualified to manage and run a state-certified laboratory, which this is. This is
For bacteria.
we're state-certified for bacterial analysis. We do have a laboratory director who maintains and the function of this lab. But all the operators, every 4 hours, will come in here, collect samples from different locations around the plant and from where many of the samples are brought into this lab to verify each different step of the treatment process to make sure each step is doing its job properly. Also, every week, samples are collected out in the distribution system, 30 samples every week, brought in here and tested for bacteria.
So it's an ongoing process.
Ongoing process. This is basically the dashboard, if you will. You've got the control room, which functions as an operations control and monitors all the inline equipment. This is laboratory wet testing on a bench to verify the monitoring equipment and to make sure that the water is compliant with state and federal regulations.
So this gives you an idea of what the quality is and also what your control should be doing.
Yes, correct. So as if we collect the water sample at one step in the plant and it looks like we're getting a deviation in operational parameters, this is where we see that, and then we make the adjustment in the control when we're out in the plant proper. In here, we have equipment to test for fluoride. we have a turbidimeter, we have pH testing equipment, and we have photospectrometers and colorimeters to test for different compounds. And all those things are used, like I said, every 4 hours, every day.
What's a turbidity meter?
Turbidity is a measure of a liquid sample's ability or inhibition to pass light. So if there are particles in water, or if it's cloudy, light will be reflected and not allowed to pass all the way through, so you get a higher turbidity number registered in NTU. The lower that number, the clearer the water sample is. The reason that's important is when we go through our disinfection process, in order to claim the disinfection credit, it's a mathematical formula. There is a flow rate, a volume, temperature, pH, the dosage of chlorine disinfectant, and all that only counts if you're below a certain turbidity, if the water's clear enough. If the water's not clear enough, then that suggests that bacteria could have a place to hide where the chlorine couldn't get it.
And you may have to recycle that water to get it down to a level that you need.
That would be reactionary. We're more proactive, where we see the water quality coming into the clear well and make sure it's clear enough before it even gets here.
All right. Jason, this is my personal request because I was involved with reporting a story from the Boston Globe in regard to the contaminants that were reported at that time to be present in Danvers. Now, what I've asked Jason to do is give you a analysis and a presentation of what we actually do and how we have persevered through this process, because it's coming forward. So Jason, take it away.
Okay, so there's an emerging contaminant in the water world, and it's called perfluorooctanoic or perfluoroheptanoic. I just call it PFAS for short. And it's a derivative of Teflon, which is widely used. It's in beauty products, it's in our clothing, it's in our detergents, it's in dental floss, it's in food wrappers, it's in firefighting foam, and we as a country, as a culture, we use it heavily, and it's in the environment now. It's found in human blood now, and now through the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule, which is a federally designed process to identify and identify emerging contaminants or things that are not currently regulated for their potential to be regulated. What are the hazards and what are the treatment processes for those? So the unregulated contaminant monitoring round number 4, at one of our supplemental water supplies, Danvers well number 1, we found trace amounts of this compound. It was well below the federal guideline of the health advisory, which is 70 parts per trillion. It was less than half that when we found it. Since then, that well has not run. It was not found at the treatment plant. It was not found at the primary source. That well was down for cleaning, and now the state is helping us to further identify how much of that compound is in that well and what needs to go from there. So that well hasn't run since we took it down for cleaning, and now its availability to run again is dependent on these tests. The state is actually working with us to determine.
Jason, thank you very much for the explanation. I just want to make sure that we don't report fake news. And this is an opportunity for the water treatment plant to present their situation. And it's a hard situation to deal with because it's an unknown that has become known, and now we have to deal with it. And we, as the water treatment plant, will solve that issue sooner or later. Thank you. Today, on May 1, 2019, we're at the Russell v. Vernon C. Russell water treatment plant, and we're facing the old building area, and the access is right to our left, And the plant itself, is that the new building?
That's the new filter building.
They're right there, the orange brick looks like the new filter building, which is a third filter that has been installed 5-6 years ago.
2009, 10, 11.
2011, that's about 9 years ago. And then we have the front entrance to the plant itself. And could you give us a rundown of what the front entrance is? Basically the entrance to the building and the facilities.
This is the building that was built in 1976. This is the primary filtration plant. We're located at 30 Lake Street, right behind Danvers Fire Department and Middleton Fire Department and the Middleton Library. And this is Middleton Pond, like I said. Heading off that way, just around the corner is the new residuals handling facility, our new power supply, emergency generator, oxygen tank, and ozone building.
That is the new ozone building. That's fairly new.
Yeah.
And then we have the water source.
Pond itself, Middleton Pond.
So what we're looking at here, through the woods, is Middleton Pond from the front entrance of the water treatment plant. And we noticed that the water level is up high.
It's full.
It's full, and we should not have any water restrictions, maybe. Jason, can you just tell us a little bit about the capacity and the access, where the water comes from?
So this is spring-fed, and it's also situated in the Ipswich River watershed. The struggle is, you say it's full now, but if we get 2 weeks of very little or no rain, it can change quickly. Where the Quabbin Reservoir can take years to get into trouble and years to recover. For a small water supply like us, it's only weeks or months. We can get into or out of trouble in a very short amount of time, and you don't know what's coming. You don't know what kind of a year you're going to have. So water conservation, outdoor watering restrictions is automatic on a calendar because you just can't foresee what the next year is going to bring for precipitation.
And we do sell water to Middleton.
The distribution system, it's all one piping system. It goes right through town line. So the water leaves here. We're in Middleton. It travels down 62 and 114 to homes and businesses in Middleton, and then on its way into Danvers to homes and businesses there, and to fill those 2 storage tanks in Danvers. But then when the plant shuts down in the evening, head pressure and water pressure is supplied from the tanks themselves, so water flows in the other direction. So water that was once in Middleton has gone to Danvers, may come back into Middleton again. So it's a tricky system. Physically, it's one system, but it's registered and reported separately.
Well, Jason, I want to thank you for participating in this tour of the water treatment plant. And we appreciate your time and your knowledge about what goes on in here and how we deliver the pure water that we deliver to our residents.
My pleasure.
And I would appreciate that, this has been an opportunity. I haven't been here for 20 years, so I don't think, a lot of people don't even know that it's behind the Middleton Fire Station and Middleton Library. So we're located in a very residential area, and we'll take another shot just at the reservoir from further down. Thank you, Jason, very much. Yes. Jason, you're gonna have to fix the dock so I can go fishing in here.
That's our access point to treat the pond. when seasonally we may experience an algal bloom, and we will go out and treat the water directly with copper sulfate, a prescribed dosage to keep algae under control. It is a beautiful location. You should see it in the morning when the sun's coming behind you. All those trees are illuminated and there's a slight mist above the water. It's quite picturesque.
Sounds like New Hampshire. And as you said, we're close by residential, one street width away, and this is a fantastic facility for our stored water that we use every day. Here we are at North Main Street in Middleton. We're at the Middleton Green. Across the street and the fire station. Here's our street that comes into Lake Street and our water treatment plant. And the entrance, Lake Street, begins right here at the Middleton Fire Station. And behind the library, Middleton Library. So that's the landmark for our water treatment plant, and we're looking forward to seeing this, presenting this thing for all of our residents.